Welcome, everyone. Well, that was a wonderful afternoon, and we're so happy to be able to extend it just a little bit longer with a conversation between Paul-André Fortier and Brian Webb. I'll just say by way of a short introduction, for those of you who don't know our distinguished guests, Paul-André has made an incredible contribution to contemporary dance, particularly in Quebec over the past 40 years, as a pioneering creator, performer, and teacher, creating nearly 50 choreographies, solos, group pieces, and site-specific works. And as I mentioned upstairs, he's now extended into the realm of theater direction. So a career that continues to grow in many new directions. We're so glad that he's here. He's been part of past MAGDANCE performances and is known for his collaborations with visual artists of all sorts. Francois Sullivan, Betty Goodwin, Robert Racine, Alain Thibault, among a few, and Edward Poitras, of course, and New Dance Horizons. So thank you for joining us, Paul-André, for this very special opportunity to wrap up our consideration of art, dance, and archive. Assisting us in this conversation and leading us down a journey of a path that remains to be discovered, let's say, is Brian Webb. And Brian joins us from Edmonton, where he has developed a national reputation as a contemporary dancer, choreographer, and artistic leader. He has brought national and international array of contemporary dance companies to Edmonton through the Brian Webb Dance Company, which he founded 45 years ago. And as he is proud to tell us on many occasions, he's presented every touring production that Paul-André's company, Fortier Danse Création, has toured across Canada. So brings a wealth of experience to this conversation. So join me in welcoming our two guests, Paul-André and Brian.
Great, thank you, Timothy. So this afternoon, we're going to try to touch several topics, one of which is the conversation then between dance as a performative act and the visual arts, the use of the word collaboration, and archive. And it's really interesting for me personally to dialogue on the word archive, because in terms of dancing, I'm not sure yet what I feel about that word. I love dancing. I grew up in small town Alberta, born in 1951. Those of you who saw the performance I did several weeks ago, I referred to that. I go, how on earth did I ever become a dancer? And I'm so happy that I did, that I've been able to spend my whole adult life in dancing. And I think we could say the same about my friend sitting beside me, Paul-André Fortier. How on earth did you ever become a dancer for all your adult life, Paul-André?
Well, I think that, am I on?
You have to press the button.
Yes. I discovered dance 1 years ago. I was 24, so I'm now 75, and I've devoted 51 years of my life to contemporary dance with passion and joy. And it's been my life, my entire life was devoted to the art form, first as a performer for Groupe Nouvelle Air, and I did my first choreography in 1978, and the set for that first choreography was a sculpture from by Françoise Sullivan. So who I met when I was, as a dancer, I was organizing a series of performances in the studio of Groupe Nouvelle Air, and we did invite the pioneers of contemporary dance in Montreal. Among them, there was Françoise Sullivan, who did remarkable choreographies in the late 40s. And for a woman doing such being so adventurous in the late 40s, I think she was a feminist before the word was created. And along with her, I met Jean Renaud, and I met several other dance artists, but Françoise was very linked to the group of the Automatistes, a group of painters who were the avant-garde in Montreal in those years. And through her, I met some of them, and she sort of had a very important influence on my way of seeing creation and my way of seeing what dance can be. Dance can be, I'll shut up soon. Dance can be very entertaining, but it can make us think as well. It can challenge us, and this is what interested me when I started to choreograph. It was to challenge the audience. And Françoise taught me, I think, one of the most important thing in my life as a creator. She told me, you're not there to please anyone. You're there to say what you have to say. And I really based all my practice on that. So she's been extremely influential in that sense. And of course, I always admired visual artists. When I discovered dance, I was teaching literature in a college, what we call a cégep, and so I had a license. We were calling it a license in those days. I think now we call it a BA or something like that in literature. So, and I was teaching literature, and I discovered dance because a fellow teacher in my school said, would you accompany me to a summer workshop given by Groupe Nouvelle Air? And since I was very attracted by theater, I said, why not? And that why not changed my life totally. For years, my mother was calling me every Sunday because I did resign from my job in the college where I was teaching. And my mother was calling me every Sunday to say, you know, there is a job offer in literature in the north of Quebec. Why don't you apply? And she kept doing that until my father ended up with a $100,000 check from the Quebec government. This was the grant for my company. So he said, oh, if the government give him so much money, there must be something there. So mother stopped calling me every Sunday. There we go.
Very good. It's so great that you bring up the name Françoise Sullivan, because in terms of contemporary dance, certainly in Quebec, but I think the argument can be made, her influence across Canada is huge. And that this woman was a contemporary dancer and a visual artist, I think is quite important.
Yes.
Because the second thing you said that interests me is your connection to theater, because of course that was mine as well. I remember when I was 17, I applied to the National Theatre School and to the BFA program at the University of Alberta. My parents thought I was very immature, which I was, and so that maybe I should stay home and not go to Montreal. But going into that BFA program, I can so easily remember the first class I took was a dance class, and it changed my life. I kind of went, oh, this is me. And so it astounds me that now at 72, it's still how I get to know who I am. Dancing is so amazing that way. And of course, I'm interested then in an individual like Françoise because of having the career between these two media. There is a similarity in language between visual art and dance. And obviously, there's a very long history in European history between visual art and dance, particularly in modernism, beginning with the sets that Picasso made, for instance, and going on into the US, which I know with Françoise, her trip spending time in New York was very important for her, and it changed her life for that very reason. Tra-la-la. But I want to ask you about the use of language, because we both have this theater background, but it seems to me that while theater and dance very often take place inside a very similar space, the theater, the language between these two forms is completely different. And I think the way we use space is very different as well. But what about the use of language, your dialogue then with visual artists? Do you have anything to say about that relationship? No.
Well, it's just that being attracted by, I go to see the work of the visual artist because it's a personal interest. I'm attracted by what they have to say and the way they express what they have to say. And some of them I find extremely powerful and challenging. And it did attract me. I wanted to have a conversation with them. And I discovered very early in my career that the best way to know someone is to work with that person. And so when I did my second or third piece, I had an actor involved in the piece, and he had a friend who was one of the most extraordinary actresses in Montreal, Luce Guilbeault. And Luce was like an icon. She was extraordinaire. And so she was coming to see the performance quite often. And one night after the performance, we were having dinner, and I said, Luce, I would have loved to work with you. And she said, why didn't you ask? So she said, if you don't ask, you have a no. If you ask, you may have a yes or a no or a maybe. So I registered that. And later on, and that's how I chose all my collaborators, composers that were scaring me, like Walter Boudreau, who's a major composer in Montreal. And that's how I ended up working with Betty Goodwin, who was for me a fascinating artist, but someone that was so big for me that And I thought I would not have thought it would be possible to work in collaboration, because we may come back on the word collaboration, because this is a nightmare. It's not what we think. It's complex, and so I wanted at some point. I had seen an extraordinary exhibition of her work in Vancouver. And the large paper with the disappearing bodies, and the transparency, and the erasing, and the drawing over the what's left, and all those things were really, it hit me very profoundly into my dancer's body and into my choreographer's body. That's how my relationship to Betty was. I found that it was a physical relation to her work. And I was dancing in Vancouver when I saw this exhibition, and I was doing a solo that I did perform here, and a solo by Denis Lavoie, where I was wearing a corset, and I was pushing my belly out of the corset, and I was wearing a little brief. And at some point, I was really on the edge of the stage. And in Vancouver, I was at the fire hall, and the first row was so close that it was obscene. The fact that the proximity of the first spectator did not work. I should have known better and just take it a bit further up on stage. And what it created, the malaise, how do you say malaise in English? I don't know, but so the uncomfort that it did create for the first row, and my own uncomfort, was just haunt me for quite a period of time. And then, for some reason, after that, I had decided to do La Tentation de la Transparence, which is a show I wanted to do on a very small space with public on four sides, very, very close, to get to that proximity, which we in dance try to avoid, because we are used to perform on big stage or smaller stage, but with a distance, in lights and everything. We hide a lot of things with distance. And I thought of doing this piece in the proximity of people. And at that time, I was. This is when I was. I went to the art gallery in Vancouver and saw Betty's work. And when I came back to Montreal, I said, I want to meet this woman. I was too shy to call myself. Anyway, I didn't have the phone number, and I would never go and ring the bell at her home. So I went through the two women who were directing the Festival International de Nouvelle Danse, Chantal Pontbriand and Diane Boucher, and I said, do you know Betty? They said, yes, we know her personally, because they were working in they both have worked at the Musée des Beaux-Arts and Musée d'Art Contemporain in Montreal, so they knew her. And they gave her a call, and they arranged a meeting, and I was welcome to meet her in her atelier. Oh boy, that's very impressive. When you work in a sacred space, I think that any visual artist atelier is a sacred space. It's like a dance studio. A dance studio also is a kind of sacred space. It's the place where you allow yourself to be so bad, and where you search for what and how you're going to say. And so I was very, very, very impressed. And I told her, Mrs. Goodwin, I have this project of working in the proximity of an audience, and I would like you to work with me, to work in collaboration with me on this project. And when I finished my pitch about the work I wanted to do. She said, "You don't need me. You know exactly what you want to do, so just do it." Goodbye. Okay. So I was performing another work entitled Les Malheurs, and I gave her a ticket, and I said, "Well, if you want to see the show, please come." And she came, and knock, knock, knock at the door of the dressing room, opened the door, there she was. And she said, "Yes, we'll work together." So that's how it happened.
And so I think that in collaboration, dialogue is really what it's about. You may do what you do, Betty did what she did, but I think so much of the creative process in a collaboration is really about the dialogue between these artists.
I would say that dialogue does not necessarily go through words. It goes through a presence, through. It's very strange because Betty was not someone who was talking a lot. She was very reserved, very into her world, and the communication, the verbal communication, was not something easy with her. We were saying very few things, and but there were things going on. She was sketching things. She was saying, "Oh, for this this kind of violin you're asking for, I have an idea of a broken bed from some previous drawings and sculptures she's done." And she did create the platform. And when I saw the platform, I thought, "Oh my God, she doesn't have a clue of what dance is, what the work of the dancer is," because there was a rake this way, a little flat space, and then it was going a bit up on the other side, and with a big crack in the center. So everything a dancer doesn't want, because of the rake, and because of the balance, but what is extraordinary is that the set came first. So I did choreograph on the platform, and the platform was about 1.5 meters by 2 meters. So this is a very small, very small space for a choreography, and the people were at 1 meter from the platform on 4 sides. So this was like a little island, and I started to create on this platform, to search for the dance that was hidden in the platform or on the platform, because this is another of my thing. I think that dances are hiding in the studio, and my job is to find them. And I don't know if for some visual artists the painting or the sculpture is hiding in the studio, in their atelier, and they go after it. And in order to find it, you have to try so many things. And suddenly you do the right move, you do the right thing, and it starts to happen. And Betty used to come to watch some rehearsals. She would not make any comments, but her presence in the studio while I was trying things on the platform stained on me. You know, it's just like if you put a piece of white cloth in a blue, with blue in the water, it will stain, it will become slowly blue. That's what she did with me. And the piece appeared not from a verbal dialogue, but from her presence, from the way she would look at me. She would make very small comments. It's another thing in Bras de Plomb. She did once a very big comment, and I had to start all over.
So that time working on the structure that she created for Le Tétation, that had to challenge your imagination then. You
Of
had no
course.
choice.
Of course.
And so do you feel that then took, let's say, your vocabulary in a totally new direction?
Well, I think I remained myself during the whole process, but I was under her influence, whatever I wanted it or not. Her presence was very strong, and as I said, it stained on me and made me do things that I would probably not have done. But also, when you have someone you admire so much in your studio, it's scary. So you have to go beyond what you think you're capable of doing. It's extremely challenging, and it is in all my relationship to the collaborators I chose during my career was based on that, on work with people who you admire. Then you will get better. You better and better and better. And this, I think that it helped me to grow as an artist.
And so, okay, this is great, I think. You also mentioned then that in the process of Bras de Plomb, she did make a comment, and it made me start again. That can happen in collaboration as
Yes.
well. And those can be very important moments, let's say, in my personal dialogue, working through my development to become the artist I want to be. What would you say about that? Like, I'm interested, I think the first time we collaborate, and let's say the 10th time we collaborate, are very different circumstances. As one gets to know each other, trust, this woman, this artist that you hugely admire, is watching your work, and she makes a comment, and I started again. Could you let us in more on what that means?
Well, for Bras de Plomb, we had another project where I was going to invite several choreographers to choreograph in a set designed by Betty Goodwin. We did not get the funding to do it, so we scrapped this idea. And I told Betty, well, I will do the choreography and I'll perform the solo. And she agreed, and she said, what are we going to work on? And she said arms. And she came up with the idea of arms, and I said, fine. And then she did foresee the 4 scenes. The first one with the white arms, and the second one with the arms attached to the body with the bracelets. And then the lead arms, which were extremely heavy, and then the gold arms. And for each scene, she did create the furniture you saw up there and the wall, and she organized them in 4 different scenes for each solo, and I created the solos afterward. And for the first solo, it went like poof. The second one with no arms was a nightmare. A nightmare because as a performer, as a dancer, dancing without arms is extremely difficult. To attach them really attached to your body, it's a constraint that is a bit crazy. And so I had enormous difficulty to compose a dance that would make sense. And then number 3 with the lead and the pipe on top, that worked by itself. And the gold went really well. That all worked really well, except for the second dance. And one day she came to see a rehearsal, And when she left, she didn't say a word. She told the costume designer in the lift going down, second dance is so bad. So bad. So at night I got a phone call, say, Paul-André, the second dance is very bad. I said, yes, Betty, I'll work on it. I'll work on it. And it's been very, very difficult. And at some point I thought I would give up on that dance and ask for other arms. And I did persist until I found them. And I did.
See, I think this is the important word, persist. I
Yes,
persist.
yes. You don't give up. You just say there is a solution, I'll find it.
Yes.
And Betty had told me in her studio, she said, it's not because I am Betty Goodwin that we have to show the work. If the work is not good, we're just not showing it. And that's also another thing, like the thing Françoise had told me earlier in my career, you don't have to show what's not good. And I did apply that as an artistic director. When I was directing MAGDANCE, we had a guest choreographer, and the piece was not good. And I decided, as an artistic director, that we would not present it. It's been extremely hard, extremely difficult to tell the choreographer, we won't present it, and that's it. So this person did not talk to me for quite a number of years, hated me for quite a number of years. I ran into that person 10 years later, and that person thanked me for that. Because time passing, he realized that the work was not good. And it's from Betty that I had the nerve to do that. And she was very sincere, very honest when she said that. She told me, if I find your choreography is not good enough, we don't show it. If you feel my set is not good enough, we don't show it. So I thought, ooh, that's something. And it's something that I still have in mind. So that sets your expectations very high.
Now, this afternoon we were watching the performances, and between one of them, you said to me, we were looking at the wall, and you said, for Betty, that wall represented the walls of the chambers in the Holocaust.
Yeah. Well,
When did that dialogue come about?
This-
Did that influence your dance?
No, it did not influence my dance, but I was, this was happening in her studio, in her atelier, and she was working on several aspects of the set, and I must have asked a question about the wall, the tiles, and she said, well, if we could, we would use real tiles, and but she said it would be too heavy for a set, blah, 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 blah. And then talking, she said, this reminds me of the Holocaust. And so, of course, it did not influence me, but knowing that gave another dimension to the set in which I was performing. And when we did Bras de Plomb, when we did La Tentation, she wanted to have full-size pictures of me naked in the hallway for the people on their way to the performance, but like X-rays on Mylar, so transparent plastic, and so it's really like an X-ray, and these photos are quite memorable, and. Once I went to her studio and there was one on the wall. She had lost a friend from AIDS, and my body was there on her wall, and she was drawing guts and a liver and a heart into my body on my picture. So I was totally speechless. I looked at her, she looked at me. We didn't say a word, and that thing had disappeared. I've never seen it again in an atelier. But these little things are so strong. You know, they influence you, whatever you want it or not, and it transpires into the dance you make. Not literally, but it leaves some little things in it. So that's for me the power of the collaboration with artists you enjoy.
Now, I'm sure the experience must have been totally different when you were working with the artist Robert Racine, since he was in the work with you, similarly to Robin's dialogue with him.
Yes.
Would have been another kind of collaboration, maybe.
With Robert, it's a play. I like his imagination. He plays with words. He plays with visual. He plays with music. He's a character, and so he was performing with me. So I did the whole creation of the piece. He was an interpreter in the piece, but his presence and all his background had an influence on what we were doing. And for that, in that performance, I also invited a filmmaker, Robert Morin, who's a major filmmaker in the avant-garde of cinema. And he created a short film and a couple intervention into the piece that were just stunning. And he and Robert and I were like, if we would be thieves, we would be complice, and we would be such a good team of thieves or whatever. It was, you know, there is complicity doesn't always call for words.
Yes.
It's situations, it's a rapport, it's an excitement. To have Robert Morin in the studio was very exciting. Robert would perform way better when Robert Morin was there, because I don't know why. And it's not on the physical seduction. It's based on you don't know what, but it stimulates everyone. And I believe in those things, and I create the situation where I can invite people who are so good.
And then we come to the project here at the MacKenzie, and we are talking about the archive and how this creation of Betty's was donated by your company to the gallery. And there must have been some dialogue between all of the players as to what will we do with this work. We want to do something. What will it be?
Well, I'll first have some comments on archives and documentation, because I had a company for 40-some years, and of course we have all sorts of artifacts and documents and so on and so on and so on, boxes and boxes and boxes, and we have a warehouse where we store all the sets and the costumes and everything. And there is a point where you have to make choices, decide what should go for the posterity, what should be preserved forever. And we were told that things that I was not aware of, that all our grant applications could go to the archive in Quebec, and that was a source of information for researchers and so on. And this is the portrait of a period of time. And they told us how important it was, because otherwise we will not be able to understand what preceded us. And we did the whole thing. But then when came the time to, there are two things that obsess me, is the sets and costumes, and then the dances themselves. Because a dance is, it's not a book. It's what is it? It's ephemeral. How can we preserve dance outside of notation, dance notation? How can you preserve dance? I think dance is preserved in the memory of the people who have seen it. It's stored in your memory, and you die with it, and you take it in your wherever you go, and it dies with you as a performer. And of course we can remount things, and okay, so that's another area. And for the sets, there were 3 sets that I really wanted to preserve, the 2 by Betty. So there is one at NAC, National Arts Center in Ottawa, the platform. Because for me, it's an artwork in itself. It's a sculpture, and the NAC did expose it in its all. And the Bras de Plomb for me was a major work, and I did propose it to several galleries, and the one who chose it is the MacKenzie. And I was very happy that the MacKenzie decided to keep it, to take it, because I had performed here with Robin. I had performed in MAGDANCE. I did a box. We did an evening, she box honey. And she was the she and the honey, and I was the box. And so that was my first MAGDANCE. And then I did, we did Misfit Blues here in collaboration with Edward Poitras. So there we go. I knew Timothy, and they knew me, and this relationship, when I learned that they were taking the set, I was extremely happy. And when I got their decision, I told them it would be nice if we could create a situation where we give it a second life, because this was created 30 years ago, and I'm absolutely fascinated by what I've seen. And to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 choreographers working on that set is quite amazing. And I think that it could be an inspiration for many other art galleries. And because of the quality of the work that was done, I think that it's something unusual and something that is new, and I think that it should make babies. That's my poor English. Does it answer your question?
Yes. On a certain level, it does. I'm interested as well. There's a lot of talk right now of the living archive. I mean, dancing is a living art form. You're either doing it or you're not. It's happening, and then it's over. And I think that's also its beauty. We can look at videoed images of a dance, obviously, but we're looking at it through the lens of the filmmaker. Mm-hmm. It's not a live performance. It was a live performance. There's a big difference there. And I'm wondering about when we talk about the archiving of dances, are we really doing a great service for the art form?
Well, the dances themselves, I don't think we can archive dances, because being ephemeral, you cannot archive what doesn't exist. And for me, as a creator, when I realized after a certain number of years of being a choreographer, I realized that there was nothing. There are titles. I can say La Tentation de la Transparence, but where is it? It doesn't exist. There are images of it, there are videos of it, but it's not La Tentation. It's captation, or it's not the real thing. And I realized that as opposed to a writer who writes books, you have books, you can share your books whenever you want. I can give you my book, and you can read my book, and you're alone with my book, but it's my book. I cannot give you my dance, give you my dance, give you my dance. It doesn't exist. And I realized that as a creator, after having creating more than 50 works over 50 years, y a rien. So that's interesting.
Okay. Would there be any questions from any of you?
Can I just make a comment relative to that as somebody who loves dance? That while in the ephemeral nature of it, it's also the thing that, sure. Thank you. Yeah, as someone who loves dance, just an observation. In the ephemeral nature of it, there is something that happens when the dancer enters the space, when you walk into the room with those pieces. Mind you, they're concrete, they're there, but there's, they change the space. And as you look at a video, but then you revisit the moment, the movement, you revisit on some level the spirit of the people who make those dances. So there is something, there's a trace, there's a thread, there is still something that moves forward. Yeah, that would be my observation. Yeah.
But that thing is not tangible.
No.
It's
Intangible.
Is there other questions while I have the mic and I'm up here? Oh, you are far. I didn't know I was going to do this.
Thank you. I know. I feel to hide here. I'll get low so I can see. But I'm curious about this idea of a constraint, the enabling constraint. Let's say Betty's the arms, and how strong a constraint, that was. But my experience responding was that we were almost without constraints, almost. And I guess I just wondered, whether that was a conversation or this choice not to constrain us in our responses, where that came from in you.
You talk about MAGDANCE, using the set and being totally free.
Yeah.
No, that was the idea, is to give this set another life, and inviting choreographers who would do whatever they want with the set. And I think that you all have done it in your own way. And this is what is interesting, and I was hoping that none of you would have seen the original work, the work that I did. So then you have these pieces of furniture, you have the way Betty decided to organize them, but you can deorganize them. That's what you did in your piece. It was totally disorganizing Betty's suggestion, and I think that is very rich. It gives it a real new life. That was the idea, that you had no constraint at all. I'm going back. Does it answer your question?
Almost, yeah.
Well, it's just
Yeah.
that with Betty creating the whole thing, we had decided that it was going to be on the arms, and so it was all set before.
Yeah.
But in your case, you were given the set, and I didn't come to say it should be about the feet, and you know, so you were totally free to interpret what the artwork she constructed inspired you.
I think with that, we could maybe also talk about what did each choreographer bring to the piece? What was their research before actually coming right into the space, which is also part of the creative process, right? I mean, you can be very spontaneous, or others may deeply research work. I would think, for instance, with, just to use it as an example, the work that Robin and Edward did and the decisions they made, there was some research that happened, some sort of dialogue that this piece of music was chosen. And that offers something. And so I think that as much as the choreographer's time in the space, which is crucial, I mean, I personally, with the work I made, I was given a lot of time. I mean, I was in there for almost 3 weeks. It's different than bang coming in to the space. But I think the research is quite important, whatever we decide to do.
So I have a brain that takes things and weaves them together in what are interesting ways to me. I hope it will be interesting for you as well. But what I'm hearing is, I'm thinking about archive. I think what I noticed is when you add archive to art and dance, then you're immediately talking about like longevity or legacy or the passage of time. And as you said, what do you hand on? What do you pass down? What do you continue? And I've been struck as I watched your piece, Brian, and again in other moments through my journey with these pieces, and I had the privilege of getting to see them multiple times. The first program I saw 3 times, this one I only got to see twice, but it's such a beautiful thing, and I think now I'm like, every time I get to see contemporary dance, I'm gonna try to go more than once if I can, because there's just so many layers that come into that, and then languages and interweaving things. But what I see is, you know, just in terms of the ages of like dancers and choreographers that are later in life and later in career, and then dancers and choreographers that are younger and, you know, creating. And so that research you're talking about, Brian, I think is interesting because to me it's also present in the practice that all of you have. And I'm not speaking as a dancer or a choreographer, but just as a person who sees and enjoys patterns in different kinds of creative practice. And so I guess I'm thinking, I imagine something of what you're thinking of when you say research, and I'm also wondering if it comes up in other places, just in the practice, just in the movement. And when you said enabling constraints, Joanna, I actually saw that today in the piece by Naishi, the constraint that of breath and of saying, okay, what happens if I hold my breath right now and I move or stand in this way, and then what happens when I move, you know, maybe with my like hands or feet leading the movement, what happens when I lead the movement from the rolling of my spine or from a voicing, what happens with that when I you know, make that louder or stronger. I just think that each dancer and choreographer created their own constraints just by the virtue, you know, Anna and Anastasia through their contortion history, that research they've been doing into that, right? And then it comes into this interaction with those objects of the set, and how can we move through those objects using this skill we know our bodies have learned how to move our spines in this way. Shout out to Krista Solheim for drawing my attention to the movement of the spine in relation to dance and just life and breathing and all of those things.
It always astounds me how quickly dancing changes as well. The way people dance today is not the way we danced when I was a young dancer at all. Or I can see that in ballet too. I think in the last even 10 years, it astounds me how much classical ballet has changed. The range of movement is totally different than it used to be. And that even affects the musicality of the piece, which means the whole dance changes. Why? Because of the dancing. And that's what I like about the art form. It's very hard to tack it into a place because it is so fluid.
I was interested, Paul-André, when you were talking about the studio, Betty's studio as a sacred place, and then your dance studio as a sacred place, and that, so there's a conversation between those two spaces, and the space of the dance theater, but now we've added a fourth space, which is the space of the gallery. How does that change things, or your perception of the set and of its potential?
Je sais pas. Well, it becomes another sacred space. What I enjoyed in it is that I really enjoyed the fact that there were performances with no lights, no big technique, no nothing, just the set and the performers and the choreographers locked into a room. And I was not here when they were working, so I don't know what were the working conditions, if people could come in and watch them working. I hope that was the case, that people could just sit and watch them like if they are part of an exhibition, and that's it. It's like so it was their studio for the creative period of time they were given. That's how I see it, and it's the studio where they would perform. This is, for me, it was not a stage at all. This was not like a stage performance, although there was an audience. It was not. It's a very raw thing. It's very simple, and I think it's the way to do it. Because if we would have had lights and all sorts of effects, it would have been totally another thing. And this is just experimentation, and that's a place where you can be bad, you can be with some bad things and some good things, and it's not about being good, it's about experimenting, it's about trying things, it's about daring. That, for me, is the purpose of this atelier. It's not to give the best show ever. And given the time they had, it's just to activate their skills, their everything, their talents, and play with things. And comment on dit, prendre le champ, oser prendre le champ. Dare have an accident. Dare going in the ditch. Doesn't matter. That's how I see it.
There's also a dialogue, a rich dialogue going on about this as well, in terms of where people want witnesses, let's say, to experience their dancing. I'm thinking of the choreographer Anna-Theresa Kirchmacher has made amazing theater dances, but she's pretty well stopped doing that. And the last couple performances I've seen of hers have actually been in art museums. And there is no, there was quite a strong distinction between where the audience was and where our dances were. But in her work, there's no distinction. And it's a different experience. It has to be, right? And it takes it right down to, I feel, even though I think there is quite a secure composition at play, but it really takes it down to the act of dancing, which is amazing, right? It's really, I think that's what our art form is. It's dancing, it's a verb. I think there was a period, and I think there's a conflict with it now, where our dances became so highly commodified that the actual dancing was losing some of its power. I mean, but we can argue about this forever. I mean, there are people who feel that the choreographer is looked up. I disagree with that so profoundly. You know, which
Yes,
is,
I always have fight with my own self because one part of me is the choreographer and the other part is the performer.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, there it is. I think that's a perfect example of that.
There is one thing I know as well is when you make a new work, a new adventure, solo or with dancers, the first time you allow someone in your sacred space is terrifying. Because the moment other eyes look at what you're doing, you're no longer looking at it the same way. And Betty was working alone, and there was never anybody in her atelier. And she would make Polaroids of her paintings and put them in her kitchen and forget them on the counter, and then take this, like if it would not belong to her, and be extremely criticized, and then go into her atelier and erase everything and tear the Polaroid. And I totally understand that because, and even with, I had an assistant, Ginelle Chagnon, for years, and the moment she was allowed in the studio, that's it, the piece was no longer going to be the same because of her eyes. And even if she would not say a single word, I would dance the solo in front of her, and then I had to change many parts of it. I knew what her eyes had seen and that my eyes could not see. That's very interesting.
We see this in dance dramaturgy as well, right? I mean, dramaturgy comes from theater, it's so verbal, but a lot of dance dramaturgy is not verbal at all. I know I've seen Geekels working where he doesn't speak at all as the dramaturge, but he may start dancing a bit. And there's dialogue through the form.
Voila.
Voila is right. Thank you very much then. And thank you to the MacKenzie and to New Dance Horizons for their collaboration in bringing this all together. It's been a really fantastic experience and an honor for us all to be part of it. So thank you very much.